When we left off in part 1, we had just looked at payroll and employees. Let's head down now to the reminders options. In QuickBooks, you can have it remind you that you have certain things coming up that you need to take care of. You can see this list here. There are things like if you have checks set up and you want to print them on a certain date, you might have that set up. You can see bills to pay, money to deposit. And for each of these, you can tell QuickBooks you'd like to show a summary of those items, the list, or you can say don't remind me at all. A summary means that when you see checks to print on your reminders list, you'll just have a total. Whereas if you show the list, you will show each one of the checks you have to print and it will total those at the bottom as well. Some of these you can tell QuickBooks to remind you so many days ahead of time that this task is coming up, and you can see those and make changes to that if you'd like. The way this option will work is when you first open the company file, there will be a white window that pops up that will give you all of this information, and you'll be able to go in and expand some of these that you've said show summary on, or if you want to maybe collapse and see just a summary of some of the ones you've said I want to see the list on, you'll be able to do that. The next one down is reports and graphs, and there's one thing that I want to point out on this screen, and that is the summary report basis. You can see there's the accrual option or the cash option. All reports are run on accrual basis automatically. Now when you're in a report, you will also have an option to choose one or the other, but automatically they will be run on accrual basis. If you don't know what that means, accrual means that as soon as you create an invoice for a customer, it's going to show up as income on your profit and loss, whether that customer has paid that invoice or not. Same thing with the expenses. If you enter a bill, for example, and maybe you haven't paid those bills, it's still going to show up as an expense on your profit and loss. Versus a cash option means only once the customer has paid you will it show up as income, and only once you've made the payment for a bill will it show up as an expense. There are some other options, you can see those here, but this is the big one that I wanted to point out on this screen. Let's head down to sales and customers. If you have a lot of invoicing that you do, especially if you have physical items that you ship, maybe inventory for example, you've just got some preferences you can set up. For example, if you typically ship by Federal Express, you can choose that option, and that way you don't have to manually choose it every time you create a sales order or an invoice. But you can look through some of these options and see which ones you'd like to change. I do want to mention the sales tax option. If you charge sales tax to your customers, you can set up some preferences here. One of them is, do you charge sales tax, yes or no? That was a question asked in the Easy Step interview, and here I can make that change. We're going to go through sales tax in a later section because there's a lot more to it than just having one flat tax that you're charging your customer, and you'll want to set all those different taxes up and then group them. But QuickBooks is asking you some questions based on if you already have those set up here. I'm going to scroll down this list here. Another one I want to mention is send forms. A form would be an invoice, a purchase order. Anytime you want to send those to a customer or vendor, you can email them directly from QuickBooks. There is a standard default template that will be set up, and you can go in and edit that if you like, or add a new one. As an example, you can see here that these would be invoice templates listed here. And if I want to just look at this basic one, I would click Edit at the bottom. This is your basic email template. You can see that it's going to pull the customer's first and last name, and you'll see some other information that it pulls. If you want to change any of that, you can just go here where you see these fields. The fields are the ones that are enclosed in these brackets here. And you can go into this Insert Field option and add some that may not be here, or if you don't like one of these, you can just delete it. But this allows you to customize it. A couple more I want to mention. If you go down to the time and expenses at the bottom, you'll see that we have here options for time tracking. There is an option in QuickBooks where you can track the time that you spend working on projects, or maybe you have vendors or your employees and you want to track the time they work on jobs, and that's job costing. And these are options for that. You can see you can pick the first day of your work week, or you can see some of your other options down here at the bottom. And I know I skipped over some of these. You'll want to take time on your own and go back and look through them. Like I mentioned earlier, you may not know right away which options you want to change. So it's okay to change them after you've been working in QuickBooks for a while. That's the preferences. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and we are finished with this video. Let's go ahead now and go over to the third video. We're going to talk about how to work with users in QuickBooks.